which are eight. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the BAMF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty, and here is our musical intro. Yes, branding. We are here today with Jason Tondro of Paizo and Owen Casey Stevens, formerly of Paizo, now working for various other RPG companies. And the subject of today is unionization at Paizo. Jason, would you like to go first?
So today is Friday. Yesterday, Paizo employees under the banner of United Paizo Workers went public with our union. We are a super majority of Paizo's eligible union employees, and we have issued public letters to Paizo's management, and we're on social media at Paizo Workers. And at this point, our desire is to get a recognition from Paizo's executive board that we are Paizo's official representation for union workers. Now, if they decide not to do that, if they do not give us recognition, we're already in the process of getting a National Labor Relations Board vote to recognize Paizo's union, to recognize UPW. Now, that's going to take a couple of months. We could get right to contract negotiations and get business back to work right now, and we could save Paizo a heap of money in anti-union labor lawyers if they just do the right thing, acknowledge the union, and we can all get back to work. That's what we all want to do.
Okay.
And to be super clear, because it's come up, Paizo workers are currently working.
For sure.
There's not a strike going on or anything.
That is absolutely correct.
They are working right now. The books are being developed and designed. And
that's why I couldn't meet with you until 5 o'clock, because I'm on the clock at Paizo until 5 o'clock, right? And we are not asking for a boycott. We are not asking for anybody to stop buying our books. Paizo is made up of employees, of people. And we need to work to get paid so we can eat sandwiches and have a roof over our head. Like, we have no desire to see Paizo go bankrupt. We don't want to get anybody fired. We don't want any kind of protest. We want to work together with management to make the best company that this can be for everybody in it.
Cool. If I wanted to contribute a flaming barrel, you guys could sing songs around. Where would I mail that to?
First off, I should direct everybody to our website, which you've already got linked there. There's links there to our Twitter feed. There's statements there. If you want to help out, there is a section of that webpage that says, "How can I help?" And we have got all of the email addresses for our executives. That's Lisa Stevens, Jeff Alvarez.
Want to watch it with me?
you're right, Jeff Alvarez.
Jeff Alvarez and Eric Mona. You can write to them. You can go to our forums. You can post your support there. And we have heard nothing from Paizo in the last 2 days. So maybe Monday. I would love for Paizo to come out Monday and say, yes, we recognize UPW. Let's move forward.
And again, to be clear, since I'm not part of the union and I don't work at Paizo anymore, I am in no way shocked they've heard nothing yet, because this is a big company-changing, legally binding deal.
For sure.
So the executives did not, I am pretty sure, have any inkling that this was coming, or at least that the timing of it would be just now. So they're going to want to get together and have a conversation with themselves. Yep. They're going to want to go talk to their lawyer. They're going to have to have a meeting. They're going to want to, and if they had the best intentions of the world, that takes time, right? And they don't want to say anything till they know what they want to say. That's the way of high-end executive business. So, I absolutely am. And again, to be clear, I am totally in support of the union. I think this is a great thing. I'm doing everything I can to help make that clear. But at the same time, I don't want anyone to get into the headspace of thinking about good guys and bad guys. Right?
That's right.
What we have here is a process to put the employees in a place where they feel they have a voice in creating the most profitable, safest, easiest to work in, most satisfying place. And that happy employees especially if you're trying to make things for people to have fun. Happy employees working on fun things is just going to work better.
Owen, I wanted to ask you a question. When
absolutely.
Mike asked me to come on, he said, "Did you want to?" Mike, go ahead.
I don't want to forget. I said the comments are open for questions. Someone has a question. I don't want to forget them because I'm recovering from COVID.
Totally.
My brain doesn't work right. But Narv Segala is saying, I know that they're working, but will affect the books in any way. People being fired, stuff being put in or out of the book, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, that's a great question. All right, so can you put that question back up there so I can make sure I can address it? Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So the short answer is hopefully not. Paizo's got a production schedule. We've got books going out. Today, I did final approvals on Starfighter Adventure Path Volume 44. So it's off to the printer. So hopefully, no. Now, we're legally protected from being fired because we've announced that our intention is to form a union, and being fired for that purpose is against the law. I'd like to hope that our executives will respect that. So nothing needs to change. Now, this is related to the freelance action, which could absolutely stall products, which I want to talk about, and we'll get to it later on in a bit, because it needs to kind of be unpacked and explained a little bit. We're partnering with freelancers to help make this action possible.
Okay, you had a question for Owen before we...
Just real quick before you ask that question, Mike, will you throw up Jason's Twitter handle? Because Jason went over some of the what's going on in the collective action, and I know, Jason, he's going to keep talking about these things. So if people want to stay informed, Jason's Twitter is a great place to get an employee who's part of the union telling you what's happening today, what are the stages, what are the steps. I also recommend that you follow and retweet and like everything from the actual union account.
That's right.
But Jason is at Dr. Comics, will be able to give people updates from his point of view in real time. So sorry to interrupt. Jason, go ahead and ask me a question.
Quite all right. And I'm just a member of the union. I'm just one of many people kind of doing my part by sharing everything that I can. When Mike asked me if I wanted to come on tonight and talk about this, and I was like, yeah, for sure. And he said, who else should we bring on? And I said, Owen, obviously. and the reason why is, you have been in this industry so much longer than me. We're about the same age, but you've been involved in the business just much more longer than me. And can you share, has anyone else ever done this before? What's the history of unionization efforts inside the RPG industry?
I'm happy to talk about it, although it's a lot of I don't know. So for background, I got in the RPG industry in the 90s as a freelancer. I then was hired by Wizards of the Coast and worked there for 14 months and was then laid off. And actually, I was laid off after 12 months, but they let me finish my last project. So it was 2 more months before I was laid off, during which time I was a dead man walking, right? Everyone knew my time was over. And it speaks to my experience in the industry that while I wasn't laid off for 12 months, the first round of layoffs at Wizards of the Coast after I was hired came 3 months after I was hired. So I was hired. Wizards of the Coast paid to move me across the country. I got an apartment. They and at the time they had the Pokemon money, right? So they literally put me up in an apartment hotel room for 2 weeks while I got settled, right? That's the kind of money they were putting into hiring me, and they hired someone just before me and someone just before them, and then 3 months later they're laying people off. And that was a shock to me because this was a big, successful business. Why would it lay people off in our department after just hiring people in our department? And by the way, if you are laying off people in our department, why wasn't I the first person to go? Now, it turns out the answer is there were people living in California because they had Last Unicorn Games, so they were laying off Last Unicorn Games. But that began my experience of the decisions of executives and managers in the game industry often being mysterious to me. And I get that, right? I'm often have my head down. I'm trying to get a book out. I'm trying to create a rule system. I'm trying to build hype for what I know and what I do. I have never made any effort to be a RPG executive on that scale. I have certainly, I run my own tiny little game company, Rogue Genius Games, so I've got some experience from that point of view.
Yeah.
And I have worked for game companies at different sizes, right? All as big as Wizards of the Coast, and then Paizo, and then Green Ronin, and then Rogue Genius, which is barely a company. I have never been asked to join a union. I have never gone to a meeting where we were discussing creating a union.
Okay.
What I always run into are people sitting around who no longer work at a place, bemoaning the state of their jobs in that company, and often companies that no longer exist, saying, you know, I looked into what it would take to start a union, but I was so tired I just left. And there is not a game, you know. I currently work for Green Ronin, and I've never had that conversation about Green Ronin. But for Wizards of the Coast, for Paizo, for like Sabretooth Games, which I don't even think exists anymore, there are a lot of game companies where I've sat around with people and they've said, yeah, we thought about making a union, but you don't just press a button and unionize. There's a lot of, there are legal requirements, and you're going to want to find a parent union, and you got to get together. And during all that time, you're at risk, because if you're not a union, you're just people thinking about a union. And thinking about a union does not give you any legal protections, but wow, can it potentially make managers nervous? Yeah. So I was a member of the Adventure Gaming Arts Association, or for a while, the people that do the Origins Award. Yeah. And there was talk about trying to make that more than just people that voted for an award. But again, that was a lot of work and effort, and sometimes money, and it never went anywhere. So I'm not aware of any actual effort to unionize tabletop gaming in general and tabletop role-playing games in specific anywhere in the English-speaking world. And that doesn't mean that they don't exist and I didn't miss them. But my career has had many, many, many more people saying, hey, we should have made a union, or I thought about a union. And when it gets to that point, people simply get tired, get burned out. The stuff that makes you think you need a union weighs on you, and you're more likely to start doing poor work, in which case you're going to get fired, or look unhappy, in which case if there's a layoff, the people think, well, they're not happy anyway, or quit. Right? I left Paizo. I thought I had another better job set up, so I decided to do that instead of sticking around and continuing trying to make Paizo better, which maybe would have been a better choice, but it's not the one I made.
Yeah. Question here I see from LeBom James. Nice. How does UPW intend to ensure Paizo's workers' voices are recognized and listened to by management without resorting to strikes?
There's a part 2 to that question.
Oh, there is. Okay. Tactics only create animosity. Okay, so 95% of all disagreements between unions and management are resolved without strikes. Strikes are rare. Strikes are a last resort. There are a million ways to negotiate before we do that. But first off, we have to even get to that stage. Like, that's way putting the cart before the horse. We just want to get recognized as a union. We have one goal: recognition as a union. And Owen addressed all the stories about how difficult it is to create a union, and I want to tell some of that story, because it involves some of the people that I work with and the incredible amount of work they put into to make this thing happen. Are we concerned about the executives taking their ball and going home? That the execs are well off and could choose just close Paizo's doors and do something else? I don't think they're that well off. I think I don't. Now, Lisa is. Lisa's a former Wizards employee who's got Pokemon and Magic.
You know that Pokemon money I was talking about that they put me up with? Lisa owned part of the company. So Wizards of the Coast, right? So at the Hasbro buyout and the Pokemon bonus, she had worked hard. She took a lot of her payment in shares of the company. And so when that company hit big, she made it. Let's talk about closing shop and going home after you tell a little bit about the story about making the union.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. So about a month ago, right before Gen Con, a couple of employees that had been at Paizo for a very long time, much beloved in customer service, who had a lot of institutional knowledge about just how to get shit done at Paizo, they were either terminated or they quit, depending on how you want to call it. And this incited a general conversation about how Paizo has been treating its employees. There were a lot of accusations and a lot of charges, some of which were patently ridiculous, but others of which were grounded very much in fact.
And to interject, people may be surprised which ones are ridiculous and which ones are grounded in fact.
That is absolutely
Please move
correct. Yeah, 100% correct. But it created this larger conversation, and it started a movement called Paizo Accountability. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
And Sarah Marie and Diego were those two employees, and their departure from Paizo kind of helped get a lot of this conversation going. Owen is 100% correct. He usually is. Like, let's just be honest. So then, this is all happening over Gen Con, and the social media is blowing up. And then the freelancers got together and said, well, we're not going to finish our freelancing contracts. We're going to stop writing for Paizo until conditions are improved at Paizo as a company. And they had a list of very specific demands that included things like hiring a diversity officer for the company, to make sure that employees that have traditionally been underrepresented at the table get their seat and get listened to and get treated in appropriate ways. And also things like pay increases, because as Owen will tell you, we were hired. When I found out how much my developers were getting paid, I was shocked. I was like, Eric, I don't know how you sleep at night. I told him that to his face. Like, you're paying this people like that Owen and I worked with, who had been in the business for a decade. You're paying them less than 40 grand to work in Seattle.
So I want to step in here for just a second.
Yeah, good.
Because that speaks directly to why I think a union is good for Paizo as a company. I think Eric sleeps at night because Eric believes Eric is doing everything he possibly can for his employees. I really, truly believe that.
Yeah.
But Eric only has himself so much power, right? Eric does not own any portion of the company.
That's right.
Eric is not currently the president. Eric is one of the people, and even the president, Jeff Alvarez, right? He doesn't own the company, and the people that own the company can't do all the work. So, and 40,000 is not like the minimum. Just for note, there are people that were hired at significantly less than that.
I was hired at 38. Yeah.
There are people that started significantly under that.
Yeah. Yes.
A union will have the opportunity to say, okay, this is what we think we need. This is what it's going to cost. These are the financials that you're bringing to the table to tell us whether or not that can work.
Yep.
It is, when you're an employee, it is very, very hard to think to yourself, they really can't give me an extra $500 a year. It's not an option. I'd like an extra $500 a year, but I don't earn $500 more than the person sitting next to me. Yeah. There isn't a whole lot of money going around. With a union, that union can form a contract, and the employee can know the people I voted, who I trust, came in and figured out what can and can't be done. And then that's a level of stress and concern that you as an employee just don't have to have anymore. Right. I don't have to go. I had employees when I worked at Paizo come around and ask if I would voluntarily let people know what my salary was, because they were trying to determine if they were being treated unfairly as a class.
Yes.
That takes time and brain share and effort. And I'm sure it was horrifying and stressful for, apparently the big gray beard frightened some people, right? So I'm sure coming to me and saying, hey, you've got 20 years of experience in the industry. When you were hired, we'd kind of like to know what that translates to. And I was happy to tell them completely, but that still was mind space that was taken up on things that weren't, how do we make a better product? How do we make this fun? How do we reach out to people? So I am putting my biases on the table. Eric Mona is a friend of mine.
Yes.
I do not want Eric Mona's job. I believe Eric Mona is doing everything he can that he thinks he can. I
agree with you.
I think a union working with Eric and the rest of the executives will be better for everybody. Because also right now, if you think you're being mistreated, right, you go to Eric.
Yeah.
Which means every single person, even if 5 of them have the same complaint, we don't all know they have the same complaint. They have to go to Eric, and Eric has to go, okay, people aren't happy about this, but people are unhappy about that, and I have to weigh them. Again, with a union, there will be a process, and he won't have to have so much of his time taken up with meetings and phone calls and work concerns that don't have anything to do with making a role-playing game or 2, and licensing things out to computer games that are awesome, and creating those products that I'm here in this because I love Jason and I support him in all things, but because to me, Paizo is an important company. Paizo matters to me, even though I'm not an employee anymore.
That's right.
I still freelance, but I believe that Paizo is already a force for good in many important ways, and I would love to preserve and protect and expand upon that legacy. And I honestly believe this is the best way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you just said. And before I lose the train, I missed noting forth. So let's pick up where we left off on the story there, right?
Absolutely.
So the freelancers do what in officially we would call concerted action, which is like a strike, but you're not a union, so you can't strike. And they simply put their pens down. They stop writing, or maybe they even had completed manuscripts that they just don't turn in, right? And this is like 40 of our best, most reliable, most highly experienced freelancers. Well, okay, so that's going on. There's this freelancer strike going on. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, people started talking about union, and we've got a lot of union raised and union bred people in this company. Jenny Jarzabski reached out to me and asked me, are you interested in joining the union? I was like, are you kidding? I wrote like a 6-volume adventure path about workers.
You really did.
And so, but when she sent me an invite, there was already a bunch of other people already there. I wasn't the first person. I wasn't the last. I was just one in a very long list of people. And we reached out to more and more people. We started building a list. And then we created a committee of all volunteers to help organize. And the organizing committee reached out and started doing a lot of that work that Owen was talking about earlier in the show. It is an enormous amount of work, a tremendous amount of work to organize a union, but we divide up the labor, right? Which is, of course, the point of a union, right? and so we reached out to Communication Workers of America, a very large, respected union, or has its origins in a telephone operator union of all things. But now they handle media and entertainment and a lot of other things. And we got contacts with CWA. Our executives started meeting with them and started learning, like, what do we have to do? And we started filling out the paperwork, and we started getting anti-union training. So we've been trained on like what to expect and how to present the issues. On how these kinds of negotiations normally go. We've all been trained and taught, like, where in the process are we? Like, what's the past? What's the future? And so then we started circulating materials, like letters, like, okay, we're going to write a statement to the executives. We've got an all hands email to all employees. We've got a Twitter statement. We had to create a website. We got Logan Bonner, one of our designers, came up with our awesome logo, which I can't show here because we're on StreamYard, which doesn't let me. But
I can share the webpage if you want, Jason.
Well, the website, you already shared the website, so our logos are there. But you can go onto our website and you can download all of our logos, and you can put them all over your social media if you want to. There's Logan's logo that he made for us. And so we assembled all that, and a lot of us, most of us, almost every single one of us, publicly signed that letter, which meant that we are publicly in support of our union, and we have a super majority of people. Paizo has about 70 total employees. but a lot of those folks are managers of one kind or another. So they're not union employees. They're not union eligible. So we had about 50 total people that are eligible, and of those 50, we have over 35, I think. So that's a nice healthy margin of error, and we had to have that many people in order for our CWA rep to allow us to go public, because they want us to succeed. So we were meeting with CWA reps. We heard a lot of horror stories about failed union efforts and how they went wrong. And we learned from all of that. And so then that all came out just yesterday. And we've been trying to extend our hand of friendship to the management in the last 2 days. There you go. You can go to our merch store and you can support us with some merch, right? And I've got that stuff on order. And if it had arrived by today, I'd be wearing it for this interview, but it hasn't.
I have a mug en route, so I would be.
There you go. We had some great questions that were put up earlier, and I missed some of them. But
well, I know Sean Vera had one that I was wanting to bring up myself
Good.
about the. Has this been done in other companies? Has there been any thoughts of doing an industry-wide unionization effort?
Owen, as far as I can tell, the answer is we've talked about it. There's been a lot of talk about it, but there's never been any motion on it. And I want to agree with Owen, by the way, in his speak forth, as Joe put it. Paizo is in a unique position. We are, if you accept out the giant monster of Wizards of the Coast, we're a leader in the company.
Don't accept it out. For tabletop role-playing games.
Yeah.
For that, if you take that department from any company,
yeah,
Paizo is bigger than anyone else.
There you go. There you go.
Wizards of the Coast is bigger, but their D&D department is not bigger.
Right. So we have a unique position. I mean, if you've ever been to Gen Con, you see Paizo's booth. It's enormous. We're a huge sponsor of Gen Con. I think we're their biggest sponsor. We do have a position opportunity here to help maybe move the entire hobby industry, to move the entire tabletop role-playing game industry towards unionization, which is frankly long needed for a long time.
And the way I think that will have to happen is for the Paizo union to be successful and subsequently for Paizo to continue to be successful, right?
That's right.
The union gains nothing if they run the company into the ground. That doesn't help anybody.
Yes.
If that's what you wanted, you could just walk away. I've proven you could just walk away and it has the same effect. Paizo is not in your life anymore.
That's right.
Well, or at least, I mean, I freelance and buy stuff, but
so
that's
a great question.
Yeah, it is. Hop to that.
How long do we wait on the execs to respond before just going through with the vote process? The answer is we've already started. We filed the paperwork to get a National Labor Relations Board vote underway. Now that takes a couple of months to process. It didn't used to take this long, but between politics and the coronavirus, like things have slowed down. So, but we're preparing to cast a vote in probably 6 to 8 weeks. But we have not waited at all. We have already, thanks, Boundary. We have already filed the paperwork. I say we, I mean the committee. Organized committee has filed that. But we can short circuit that process with recognition from Paizo management. We have not waited at all. Yeah.
And Jacob just bought a t-shirt. Thank you, Jacob.
Hey, Jacob.
By the way, here's the genius of Logan's logo. That thing looks cool. So there are going to be people wearing union t-shirts at Gen Con, whatever the next in-person Gen Con is, right?
Oh, and I never finished the story about the freelancers. Okay.
Yeah, please.
The part 3 and final bit of the freelancers. So the freelancers had a long list of demands that they wanted. Well, yesterday, the freelancers updated their demands, and they will return to work immediately today if Paizo recognizes United Paizo workers. So now this whole freelance backlog that is giving management agita, right? They can put all of that behind them, and we can get back to hiring employees. We can get those manuscripts from the freelancers that are effectively on strike. We can hire new freelancers for projects that have scheduling coming up. Like we've got books that we've got to assign last week. I know for a fact we have projects that we had to assign last week that we can't assign because there are no freelancers available to do them. And we can't just hire new freelancers. These are big assignments. Like, you can't just give a 10,000 word organized play society scenario, or a 35,000 word Starfinder adventure, or a 50,000 word Pathfinder 2 adventure path volume to just, some new freelancer that you've never hired before. You have to give these these are flagship products that need flagship writers. And with those writers on strike, effectively on strike, Paizo's in a real bad situation, but we can fix that. We can put all that behind us, and we can get back to making good games. So I want to thank all the freelancers that have helped and stood beside us and helped to make this thing happen, because that's an incredible amount of leverage that it makes our chances of success, frankly, much higher.
I feel like at this point I should admit that in my college years I worked for the Pinkertons for a few semesters, and I'm terribly sorry about that. Sorry, Owen, you were saying?
I was going to say, Jason, I wanted to ask you a question. You may not know the answer, but I've been wondering. So as I understand it, people in positions of management are not eligible for membership in this union.
That's right.
Okay. But there are manager unions for people who are in management. So,
I don't know. I don't know much about this topic. Now,
my understanding is that there are such things as manager unions that can themselves form, and that would be an unrelated process, but it's a thing that does happen.
What I do know is that if this had happened 6 months ago, some of the people that are currently managers would be involved in the union, right?
Yeah.
We have very strong support from what you might think of as the middle management of Paizo, right? Like development managers, managing editors, design managers. And we have a lot of support from that rank of management that's below the executive team, but not regular non-management workers, union eligible employees like me.
So I want to go back just a little bit, because I wanted you to get the story out, but someone asked us whether or not the union is concerned about Lisa Stevens taking her ball and going home.
Right.
That she certainly has the legal power and the real ability to shut the doors tomorrow should she choose to.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on that? And is it something that the union's talked about in a way that you're willing to share on screen?
Honestly, this is kind of just my personal opinion. I don't know Lisa well. Like my interactions with Lisa have basically been limited to some conversations about Ars Magica, right? A game that she helped make back in the old days, in which I still avidly play. And I remember when I was first hired, I would think to myself, if I ever get trapped in a room with Lisa, that's what I'm going to talk about, is Ars Magica. That's the one thing we have in common, right? But what I do know is that the executive committee is more than just Lisa Stevens.
Yeah.
And I think that Eric and Jeff, they are not independently wealthy, right? And they do depend on the income from Paizo to pay their rent or their mortgage. And I don't think that I can't, Lisa better than me, but I don't think she would close the business and leave Eric and Jeff hanging out to dry.
So my first day at Paizo as an employee, Lisa came down and said, "Hi, Owen, I wanted to welcome you. Glad you're here." And of course, I knew her because I worked at Wizards of the Coast. She worked there. She's a huge Star Wars fan. She might be the huge Star Wars fan. I worked on the Star Wars role-playing game. I'm a Star Wars fan. As with Eric, I haven't been to her house, but I have sat with her at dinner at functions. I feel like Lisa wants what is best for her employees. I really do. I think she cares about her employees. I think she cares about the company. So whatever she decides, I believe it will come from a place of wanting what is best for everyone that looks to her for employment. I mean, there are 80 employees at Paizo roughly at this point.
70.
It is It has been bigger, but wow, was it smaller when I was hired in 2014, right? So it's not a small company. In fact, I think, the legal definition of small company is under 50 people.
I have another question, and this one might take some nuance. Just I want to get it before I forgot about it. From Peter Zupan, who I believe is a Reddit mod. So here's a question about that. Does Paizo need so many managers so more of them can join? Would be a head of change the power dynamic over director or manager?
So I think that we can change the title. You can call the titles whatever you want, but for my purposes, what I mean by the word manager is somebody to whom another employee reports, right? So if I report to Jason Keeley, he's my manager. Now we can call him head of Starfinder development if we want to, but it doesn't change the fact that he's my manager. I report to him, and that means that he's not eligible for the union for union membership. Now, the question of why does Paizo have so many managers? If I can go a little bit into my personal opinions here, I'm not speaking for the union here, but when you aren't paid a lot of money, and so people start working for Paizo and they're here for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they're doing the same gig and they're not getting financially compensated for it. Well, how can we compensate you? If we can't give you a salary bump, or we can't give you a big salary bump, maybe we can give you some kind of authority or position instead. We can give you a title change and we can move you around. And maybe that'll give you a new part of the job that's new to you and so interesting and exciting. We can give you some kind of new role that gives you something new to do, and that becomes a reward. Now, I don't know. We tend to change around our management structure quite a lot in Paizo.
So this is a case where I do have relatively strong opinions based on having been at Paizo when there were fewer managers total.
Yeah.
Here's one of the complicated issues, and it's a complicated issue for any tabletop role-playing game. In order to be a manager of tabletop role-playing game creators, you have to have a pretty good idea what they're doing, how hard it is, and how long it takes. Because if someone tells you, hey, I'm getting married, so I'm going to be taking 2 months off, I've got a honeymoon, or someone breaks their legs, or someone leaves and you need to hire new people, or there's a bigger than normal project and you're trying to figure out what resources you need to put on it. If you have no idea what these people do, not only no idea, if you don't have a really good idea what these people do, you cannot get them the necessary support. So one of the things that happens is that at Paizo, right, there are just in the word department, if you will, you've got Starfinder developers, Starfinder designers, Pathfinder developers, Pathfinder designers, editors, and art department. Now, some of those departments are, or at least where I were when I was there, as few as 3 or 4 people. Some are as many as maybe 5 or 6. But that means that to have a really good idea of what all these departments do, they all need a manager. Now, sometimes these departments, like Starfinder and Pathfinder, sort of have one set of concerns for design and developing that is separate from the editorial concern. Well, now if you're going to be overlooking all of Starfinder and Pathfinder design and development and freelancer management, and I skipped organized play, and I apologize, because that is its own whole, and that also has Starfinder and Pathfinder. So I am of the opinion that one of the things that's happened is that there have been problems in the past where it looked like the management flow didn't work well because someone who was an expert in A and okay at B was put in charge of A and B, but they knew what was going on with A better than with B. And so an effort has been made to have managers who have done the jobs of the people they are managing.
That's right.
But there are a lot of different jobs, and that ends up meaning a lot of managers. I mean, I know for a fact, Eric Mona would like to have as few people send him an emergency email for a meeting as possible. He's got a job to do, right? He's got his own... Being the publisher over there does not mean that he's eating bonbons. That's a big company, and every major initiative requires his thought and his input in a meeting and some development and having people bring plans to him. But at the same time, he doesn't want to have a situation where there are people working for him who do not have someone that understands their problems able to advocate for them for the time and resources and issues that they've got.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that is why Paizo has so many managers.
I'm glad that you're here because you're absolutely right. Like Paizo has a lot of divisions inside of it. And we work better when we have each of those divisions has its own manager who understands the gig. That's absolutely true. So I'm glad that you're here to correct me on that. Thank you.
Well, I'm a little lost for words. This might be the largest audience I've ever had for a podcast, and definitely the most comments we've had. Definitely a groundswell of support from the community. Usually at this point in conversation, they ask, what are the next steps? But it seems like we've kind of already covered that. It's a mixture of the voting process is underway and the ball's kind of in. Go ahead, Owen.
So Jason's next steps are set, right?
Mm-hmm.
The community's next steps are important, and you can go to unitedpaizoworkers.org and see what they are, but this is still a great time to, for example, if you were thinking of canceling your subscriptions for any reason, you might, instead of canceling your subscriptions, write in and say, hey, I've been thinking about canceling my subscriptions, but if you recognize the United Paizo Workers Union, I won't do that.
Yeah.
Or if you have canceled your subscriptions, you might say, hey, as soon as you recognize United Paizo Workers, I will buy back into my subscriptions.
Yes.
If you are not someone that has a subscription and you're just thinking, can I spread the word? This is still a great time to be looking at, what are their tweets? What are they saying? What is the word getting out? The community has a voice here. And that voice is crucially important. One of the things that Paizo has done to be successful in a very hard field, because if you look at every tabletop game company that launched the same year as Paizo, a lot of them do not exist anymore. One of the things that Paizo has done really, really well is build a community of people who care, people who are genuinely invested, right? There's a reason that going from first edition Paizo to second edition Paizo, it's still set in Galarian. There are people that care about the world of Galarian. There's a reason that they're still doing stories about the Iconics. There are people that care about those stories. And there is a reason that so much effort is put into by the developers and designers and editors to go over what story is being told just by describing the setting of these worlds and making sure that that is inviting to members of the community, that diversity is super important. And I'm going to read this out loud from Sarah Marie, because if she types it, it needs to be read.
Sorry.
Put it back up. The Paizo forums are a great place to show support for people. It does actually really help for folks to see comments in there. You don't have to argue with people there. Just voice support. And I did that earlier today, right? There was a thread about this, and there are people that said things that not only do I not agree with, some of them I thought were dumb. Others I thought were actually ethically, morally evil. I didn't go at any of that. I just said, hey, I support the union. I know a lot of these people. Several of them are my friends. And even ones that aren't my friends, I am amazed at how creative and smart and dedicated they are. I trust them to know what they need. And if they think it's a time for a union, then I agree with them.
Yeah.
But having been an employee, and I'm sure Jason will agree, when you, what Sarah Marie said, when you are having a bad day and you're not sure anyone cares about how much effort you're putting in to make sure that when we name a feat, it's not the same name as another feat that came out 4 years ago that does something totally different. When you're wondering if anyone cares about that, going on the forums and seeing someone say, oh, this is my favorite product ever, just once can carry you through many hours of drudgery.
I want to piggyback off of what Owen was just talking about, because this really came home to us during Gen Con. We were getting up, those of us on the creative side were often getting up and giving panel conversations and having online live conversations about these books, while the Paizo accountability hashtag was trending, and all of this negative press about the company, about the employees was coming out. And quite frankly, we were pretty stressed out about it. We weren't really sure if we wanted to do this. A lot of us were feeling physically ill. Like, it was just bad. But you know what? The fans totally came through. It was fantastic. and the fan support from writers, from players and GMs and just customers who like to buy our books and read them and never even get to play the damn games. All the freelancers that came through for us, and they were like, listen, they understood that we, the people that work at Paizo, the creators, the people in warehouse, the people in customer service, the people that help keep the IT computers running, like everybody that helps, that works at Paizo, we're part of the solution, people. We're not part of the problem. And they wanted to work with us and help us make Paizo better. And their support was overwhelming. Like some of us pretty much came to tears on live television. It was overwhelming. And so as Mike, as you say, like, well, what's our next step? And Owen says, like, we know what we're going to do. Well, let's talk about what we need to do. And that is, it's going to be a long fight. Like we're in the social media age where we've got like a 24-hour attention span, right? And like keeping things going from one day to the next has been really hard. And the folks that have been representing Paizo accountability and calling for Paizo to improve its working conditions and the way that it treats its employees and all those changes, they have been sending out retweeting lonely hashtags for weeks, right? Like trying to carry this torch by themselves. And the rest of us are now on board with unionized Paizo, and it's going to be a long fight. We have to assume that if worse comes to worse, I'll want the Paizo executives to recognize UPW. Please introduce the big biter.
This is my housemate's cat, Alphonse Lord Tubbington of the Order of the Big Biter, and he felt the door had been closed too long, so he wanted to come in.
There is one rule, and that if there is a cat, we must all see the cat.
We must all see the cat, right?
We would love for Paizo's management to recognize our union on Monday, but if they do not, if they choose not to, we're going to have 2 months of keeping the fight and maintaining solidarity as anti-union tactics might get deployed against us. And we're prepared for that. We're training for that. But we are going to need you. And when I say you, I mean all y'all. We're going to need your support because that's what's going to keep us going through the long, hard, difficult 6 to 8 weeks, 2 months, maybe until we get a vote. Now, I don't want anybody to worry for a minute we're not going to pass that vote because we have so many people publicly supporting the union. Like they are down on paper in public with their names. So, and our numbers have grown since yesterday, not shrunk, right? So we have the numbers. It's a foregone conclusion. It is not a question of if, it is a question of when. But that when can be, it's going to be a tough fight. It's going to be a long, slow haul up a deep mountain.
It might be, or and this is important, right? And the reason one of the reasons I agreed to be on the show is because Jason asked me to, but I am not a Paizo employee. I'm not part of this union. I am not. I don't have any Paizo freelance contracts at the moment. That's right. That doesn't mean that I am
Thank you, man.
Unbiased, right? My biases are pretty open, and some of them are. I love a whole bunch of these people. Paizo Paizo executives and ownership can have the very best intention and want to accept it and still not have managed it by Monday. So it is, as Mike said earlier, it is a situation that requires some nuance, because game designers and editors are detail-oriented, organized, pre-planning people. Yeah. Obviously, the Paizo union will have plans in place to make sure that they can get this done, whether the executives and ownership help them or not. Equally obviously, if they're going to have a vote on November 20th and Paizo comes in and acknowledges them without the vote on the 18th, that's 2 days better than waiting for the vote.
Yep.
Monday would be great. Friday would be great. A week from Monday would be great. Yeah. The sooner this happens, the more time there is to get this stuff ironed out. before the holidays hit, because at least in my experience at Paizo, a bunch of people save up a bunch of their vacation time and personal days for the end of the year when you get a few days off anyway, so you can take it in a 1 or 2 week block. And it's just, it'd all be smoother if it was taken care of by then. The whole process is going to take time no matter what. And the people who are on the committee that are running this union have basically decided to do 2 jobs, right? They are still all doing their Paizo jobs.
That's right.
And they are also now running a union, which is another job.
Yeah.
So just like we were talking about getting on the forums and telling the people who are making the books, we love the books, we love what you do, we love hearing you on stream, we love hearing you play, is uplifting. Giving the union and the freelancers who are in concert working with the union,
Yes.
your support, even if you don't know their names, that makes the day brighter for them.
For sure.
So, I mean, I personally want to, and I'm bad at things, so I may not, but I want to go and find every time that the Paizo union puts out a new tweet for the day and repeat it, boost it, reply to it. Justin Knight says, hopefully the party won't have to recast their buffs. Yeah, hopefully. I do not presuppose any fight taking place. But we all know that social encounters, even if they aren't a combat, still take time and have die rolls, right?
That's right.
If it's a puzzle encounter, a social encounter, exploration, these things are all tiring and time consuming, even if it doesn't become a fight. So I am trying to stress that there's a lot of language that can be used here. If it comes to a fight, I have no doubt that the people that took this risk, that took this time, that put this together, to the best of my knowledge, for the first time in tabletop RPG history, are ready for and will win that fight. But it's not a foregone conclusion that it'll be one. It may just be a complicated process with everyone having the same goal, profitability and happiness for everyone, and disagreements about how to get there. At the same time, Sarah Marie, who's brilliant, by the way, and as far as I know, currently unemployed, so hire her, says hope for the best, plan for the worst. She's 100% right.
That's right.
And I want people to take away from this that the more you support the union and the employees and the people making the products, the easier this is for them, no matter how this shakes out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I also want to thank Mike and everybody that's been here in the chat this last hour. Like, a lot of my fellow Paizo workers are here, and that's incredibly encouraging. And I want to thank you all for coming on and saying things that we've forgotten as we've been up here talking. Sarah and Brian and so many other people that are involved in the union, sharing their information every day. Would the union have any role in negotiating on behalf of freelancers or temporary contract workers? Okay, I'm glad you asked that. Now, we had been fighting as developers to improve pay rates for freelancers, but we can put that that becomes something we can talk about in contract negotiations if we want to make changes and we want to reform. Now, I don't have any firm knowledge about this, and I can't commit to anything. But what I can say is that it's the developers in Paizo who have fought to increase pay rates for the freelancers we hire. And it would be my hope that we would be better able to do that as a union, and as a way to not only improve pay rates for freelancers, but to get them more time to actually write the freelance stuff in the first place, which is, it becomes a project management and scheduling issue. I'd also like to get some playtest time built into the freelancing schedule, because our books would just be better if we got more opportunities to freelance. So that's just one of many things. There's a lot of ways that we can improve the freelancer experience for Paizo. They're not a part of the union because they're not full-time employees, but we hire freelancers and we become the spokesman for freelancers. Developers in many ways are the freelancers' voice inside Paizo, and we take that responsibility very seriously.
Again, Paizo has been a trendsetter in a lot of ways, in a lot of steps. If the Paizo union goes well, that may well change the paradigm for how tabletop game companies interact with people in general, without having to be employee Paizo specific. And who knows where that will go. I am certainly watching with great interest.
Does it help for freelancers to ask developers for higher rates? Well, it doesn't hurt. Always ask for more money. There's no shame in that. And my experience with the developers that I know is we always try to pay you as much as we can. I know that's certainly my theory, my approach. We have guidelines on what we're allowed to pay and what our starting word rate is for freelancers and how we can move that up. But we also have other projects that have guaranteed word rates. So we have a lot of discretion as developers within a certain bracket. That's kind of what
I mean, when I was a developer, I frequently had a budget, right? And the product has to come in on budget.
That's right.
And sometimes I would have a freelancer say, "Hey, I can do this, for whatever reasons." For whatever reasons.
That is my R2D2 pressure cooker.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it at Napa Sonoma.
Okay.
Hey guys, I'm getting called away for family commitments. This has been a fantastic conversation, but I do need to wrap things up. Maybe we can do a follow-up in 2 or 3 months, depending on how the situation goes, and kind of see where we're at.
I think that's a great idea.
We can do a follow-up a lot sooner than that if you'd like to. Like Joe noted below in chat, Monday is not the deadline. We have any time between now and the vote for Paizo to do the right thing and work with us together moving forward. So hopefully we'll have good news soon.
As the situation develops, as they say.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, hi. Thanks to everybody checking in the show. Thanks to all the comments. Jason, thanks for coming on. Owen, thanks for coming on. I need to go put my kid to bed and deal with my dogs. So I will catch you guys later. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on the BAM Podcast.
Bye, folks.